Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment you are going to hear the voice of a man who will tell you some tremendously important facts.
Welcome to the Reality Revolution. Today I have a wonderful guest, Matt Kahn. Matt Kahn is an incomparable spiritual teacher, highly attuned empathic healer, powerful speaker, and captivating author. He enriches people's lives by providing heart-centered solutions that ignite, delight, and unite. Matt wrote an amazing book, All for Love, the transformative power of holding space. And he was recommended for me by Kyle, and I was super excited to talk to him. And one thing led to another. It's been kind of a weird day because we got our interview started off on the wrong foot a little bit. But I'm super excited to get a chance to talk with him, and I've been excited for a while. So welcome to the Reality Revolution, Matt.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really an honor to meet you and be here.
I've heard so much about you and your teachings. For people that have not heard about you, tell me your origin story. How did you get into this? What was the reason that you wanted to choose this particular life path?
In all honesty, I believe this path chose me. And if I look back at my life, I tell the story many times of how I had an out-of-body experience and I met Jesus when I was about 8 years old. And it really acted as an activation of my consciousness. And really what's fascinating about my life, and really it's a reflection of all of our lives, is I spent a lot of my childhood really in what I call empathic confusion, where I really didn't know where my experience began and other people's ended. And I would often interpret people's moods as their belief or their perception and viewpoint of me. So I would spend most of my life trying to cheer people up, thinking once they were happy, they approved of me. And I didn't realize that as an empathic healer, I'm actually feeling other people's emotions and confusing it with their perception of me. And so as I went through my life, and a spiritual journey wasn't something I really decided to embark upon. It's just kind of what unfolded throughout my life. And I began to realize through a series of many profound awakenings that I am feeling the emotions of other people. And as I began to realize this, the universe started to guide me into a journey of teaching me how to facilitate healing to help people heal wounds, find true safety, regulate their nervous systems, and to really go through the process of transforming and becoming spirit and form. So ultimately, it's quite a mysterious journey that we're all really on. But for me, I can say it wasn't a path that I chose. It was a path that I accepted, that I believe that chose me. And what an honor to be on a path and to serve so many beautiful hearts.
Absolutely. It does sound like an amazing journey, and I relate to your experience as an empathic healer. The biggest thing, especially from a younger age, is a lot of times when you're feeling other people's emotions, you think they're your own. You're standing next to somebody that's super depressed, and you're depressed. So you had to have that moment where you realize, this is not me that is experiencing this feeling. What was the point where you realized and were able to differentiate the feelings that you were feeling?
I did, but what I believe earned me the opportunity to have that realization is how much time I spent believing they were mine and processing my experiences of others as if they were my feelings. And I really do believe that for all of us on the healing journey, as we take time, as we spend time with each feeling, we graduate into a level of consciousness where we can see a deeper truth about our feelings. And one of those possibilities, as you so brilliantly stated, was, hey, I'm feeling this feeling, but is it actually mine or something that I've inherited and something I've absorbed? And I look back at my life, and throughout my life, I'd processed my feelings and what I thought was the origin of these feelings. And I'd never considered, what if this is an emotion I'm inheriting or replicating from another person? And as soon as that dropped in my early adult life, it was as if I was turned inside out. And instead of being a person with light within me, I became the light appearing human in form. And as I did that, the light that was waking up inside me began transmuting the emotional density in other people. And I realized that I didn't have the ability to help transmute other people's densities until I stopped insisting that my feelings must be mine or belong to me. And for everyone listening on this program, what an incredible shift can take place when we say, as much as I process my feelings, as much as I try to take responsibility for my feelings, could it also be possible that these may not be my feelings at all? And by asking that question, our light begins to transmute, return to source, what actually we've inherited that doesn't belong to us. And then the light that we are returning to source by transmuting these emotions then equally become blessings to help our world evolve, expand, transform, and awaken. So it's quite a radical awakening, and what a plot twist in our life's movie, to say the least.
I find it interesting how common it is, the people that I talk to that experience this empathic transition in understanding their emotions. And the question I always ask, because I've experienced it myself, is how do you deal with large crowds when you go to, like, you know, when you go to the mall, when you go to Walmart, when you sit in a crowded theater,
right?
You know, I find myself, you know, in a happy movie just bawling, and I know it's not, I'm like, obviously somebody here is super sad. How have you learned to deal with that? Because we don't just want to sit my first instinct was to become a hermit, and I didn't want to go to parties. I didn't want to go to parties because it was too much. When I'd see a large group and it would horrify me. How have you been able to deal with that?
It's a fascinating way of evolving, because I think in the old paradigm of personal growth, it was, if we imagine emotional density like waves in the ocean, right? Everyone's trying to go over. I want to overcome something. They're trying to go over a wave. And through my evolution, what I've been taught to do is to go and be what's underneath it all. And so what's interesting is that when I'm in large crowds and people say, how do you deal with that? The true answer is, I don't. Because I'm in a reality where the awakenings I've gone through have gone so deep, I actually exist and live and know myself as the space within and between things. And so I experience myself as the ocean holding the waves of individuals, holding the waves of thought, the waves of emotion. They're passing, they're coming and going within the ocean of my existence, but there's nothing for me to do but to hold it in this remembrance and recognition as I watch these waves being transformed by witnessing it from this standpoint. So I in the beginning, I used to have, and a lot of people have, coping strategies, mechanisms, processes. And it's a wonderful thing in the beginning to learn how to manage our energy. But at a certain point, it's the coping strategies that keeps us identifying with other people's feelings. And the radical invitation is, as we begin to know ourselves, not just as form, but as the space in which form arises, we actually become the light transmuting the density around us, instead of the people that are taking on the densities of others that give us more things to process. So it's a radical departure to conventional personal growth and development, but it's an opportunity to wake up within the dream of life and to know who is truly wearing the costume of the body that you inhabit.
I love that. It's almost like you move as you evolve from being the receiver
Yes.
to the projector.
Yes.
That you're just projecting this light and transforming those around you instead of receiving their light.
Yes. In fact, when I'm in a crowd of people, and for me, whether I'm alone or in a large crowd, I feel the same amount of emptiness. And I also can feel my light expand, my light masquerading as the appearance of other people. And so in my experience, I'm in a crowd of one. I'm not in a crowd of many. And from that place, that isn't something I have to think about, because it's an awakening that shifted me into what's called an abiding state of consciousness. They call it samadhi. And so I live in this abiding, permanent meditative state, where as I'm moving through the world, I'm not actually feeling what used to bombard me for so many years. I'm actually feeling my light transforming all things around me. So instead of me feeling what other people are overwhelmed by, I'm actually feeling what my light is doing to the world around me. And the activity in my body is that very transformation and progress.
Amazing. So taking this, this reminds me, Kyle told me to ask you about your experience with Ram Dass
Oh,
in
yes.
relation to samadhi. Tell me about that and share that with the people who may not have heard that story.
It's a funny one. So in the very beginning of my career, I had the honor of going to a Ram Dass and Krishna Das retreat in Maui,
Wow.
right? And I
He
got
was
to,
amazing.
he's amazing, and
Mhm.
he's a beloved. And I sat with Ram Dass in a crowd of so many people, and I was talking to all these people that had received names from Ram Dass, and I was thinking, I want a name. I don't want to feel left out. I mean, this is like the first year of, and and my guide Melchizedek was like, my son, you are already free. And I said, yeah, that's nice. I want a name. Right. And so I went up to Ram Dass at the beginning of the retreat and I said, I would like to receive a name. And he said, come back at the end of the retreat. So I go to the retreat. I do this 3-day thing. It's incredible, life-changing. And at the end of the retreat, we're going to end with a Krishna Das Kirtan concert. And I see Ram Dass in a wheelchair sitting kind of by himself for a moment. And I walk up to him and I say, thank you for the honor of being here with you. I know you said to come back at the end of the retreat. I really don't need a name, but thank you. And he grabbed my hand and he looked at me and he said, Ganesh Das. Now, what's interesting about that is that Ganesh, as a Hindu deity, is the remover of obstacles, which is the role I play as a healer. And he and I have never met. And he said Ganesh Das. And as he did, the light from his teacher shot through his third eye, hit me on the forehead, and literally everything of my past oozed out of my ears like warm liquid or nectar.
Wow.
And I wandered back to my seat where I was with my friend, and they go, well, what just happened? And I said, I don't know. And I sat there in a state of bewilderment and did the chanting with Krishna Das. And from that moment, which that's called a Shakti pot, which is when the light comes through someone's third eye and hits you as a moment of spontaneous awakening. And from that moment and a few other Shakti pot experiences that I've received and both transmitted to other people, it was literally like having your mind and the history of identification etched, sketched out of your brain in one split second. And it rewires your nervous system to identify yourself as light in the body, not a person in search of the light. And that was a radical shift where literally it's not as if anything happened externally, but on the inside, there was a shift. I once wrote this quote to describe the shift. And I said, I once was a person standing in a space, but now I'm the space where a person stands.
Oh, amazing. So you said that your guide was a Melchizedek, and it's so amazing that you said that, because before, the way you were talking, even the wordage sounded so much like Paul Selig's, that I was like, I hear Melchizedek coming through. Have you resonated with his teachings or found any familiarities? Tell me about your experience with your Melchizedek guide.
Well, I've met Paul personally. I think he's a wonderful person. As a teacher in this field, we as teachers and authors don't always get to see other people's work. So I'd never seen Paul channel, and I walked into a room and I thought, oh, let me just check this out. Because I always like supporting other people. And I watched him do what he does, and I'd never seen anyone do the binaural thingy that he does. And I thought it was just fascinating. And I was kind of watching, how that's repatterning the subconscious mind, and really thinking it's a really incredible process, because through all of us, especially if you're channeling, there are so many sophisticated, higher dimensional things working through us that we just kind of allow to come through. So I think Paul is an incredible person. I haven't dived too much into his material. I kind of have this thing where I want to keep my own channel as pure as possible. And I don't want to inherit people's language patterns, because the way I channel words constructs these codes of energy that as I talk are opening doors inside of people. So, but Paul is a dear soul. But Melchizedek has been one of the guides that's been with me from the beginning. I remember I walked into a spiritual bookstore and my guides had said, tell them about your experiences. And I said, hey, why do I see purple energy everywhere? And I looked at a wall that had these pictures of ascended masters. And I pointed to Melchizedek. I said, who's that? They said, that's Melchizedek. I said, well, I don't know who that is, but that's my main guide. And then as I went to the spiritual bookstore and they said, hey, would you like to be a part of our psychic development course? And I thought, all right. And so I started taking it. And then 3 weeks into the course, they said, can you teach this? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm just at this course. And they said, can you give a reading? Well, what's that? And I sat down with someone and they said, read them. And for one split second, I thought, what the hell is my life becoming? And as soon as I thought that, boom, it came right through. And then it started to escalate, and Melchizedek would come to me at, the grocery store and say, my son, deliver this message to this woman near the oranges. Her dead grandmother is here. And I'm like, yo, what? So I had this feeling like if I don't, my heart's going to explode. And so I walked up to this woman. I said, look, you don't know me, but I'm being told to deliver this message from your deceased grandmother. And she, and then this woman said, I've been processing her death, and that just brought me closure. And she burst into tears. And I walked away and I said, wow, that was amazing. And do I have to do that again? And so I was put in these positions over and over again to tell people things that I didn't know, but it was a transmission. And it's as if I'm listening to Melchizedek tell me things, and I'm saying what he's telling me at the same moment in time. And so it's just this flow that I live in. And what's interesting, just to go back to what we were saying before about empaths, we're all empaths at different levels of realizing empathic nature. Of course, narcissism being the greatest denial of empathic nature, but we're all empaths just at different levels of realizing and embodying the conscious of empathic nature. And as I continued in my path of delivering messages and spontaneously being put in a position to facilitate healing, which was never an expectation or an idea I had for my life, I began working with Melchizedek and other guides like Jesus and Mother Mary and the archangels. And they all have different frequencies. They all have different nuances to their message, but all different frequencies of love and unity. And because everything they were saying was embodying and teaching love and unity, that's what gave me the ability to trust it and allow it to come through me, but without me having to step aside or go somewhere else. I became what's known as an embodied channel. And I've been doing this for about 18 years. And Melchizedek, who looks like Gandalf the Wizard, has been a guide I've been talking with every day, who talks very biblical. He says things like, in tomorrow's time. And I'm like, tomorrow's time? But it's just an incredible journey. And it's one that we can't understand. We have to only fathom it by living it out.
I have this sort of theory because I have an episode on Melchizedek on my channel where I go through the history of Melchizedek and all of the different people. And I have this sort of theory that there's like a planet that is like a Melchizedek school where they teach spirituality, and they send you on your way to different sectors of the universe. And we meet these people that are, every time I've met somebody that has channeled Melchizedek, it's always a very similar level energy, a color of energy, it's a very similar vibration. And it's always an amazingly subtle teaching that just seeps in like water. That, it's always very, I can always tell but it's a group. It feels like a group of, and I was wondering if you had ever had that thought.
Well, I experience ascended masters as a collective consciousness, and I know myself as the oneness of consciousness, and in the oneness of consciousness is a collective consciousness. For example, just like all notes in a song make up one melody, in the same way, all masters are serving various levels within the one. When you were talking, and I definitely can I resonate with Melchizedek being like in charge of a cosmic mystery school, and that what Melchizedek is the divination and activation of Christed consciousness, which is when our consciousness awakens into the sovereignty and embodiment of our spirit. And of course, Christed consciousness is a journey of awakening. All of us are going through at different levels. And I've been very aware that this is a path I've been on. I've been going through incredible initiations. I get astral projected into the Akashic records. I've had experiences of being on light ships. I've met beings like Kuan Yin and went, oh, this is actually a real interdimensional galactic princess. She's real. In fact, when I met Kuan Yin, I was on Commander, this conversation is so funny, but I was on Commander Ashtar's light ship in an interdimensional portal, and I'm standing as close as I am to you, to Kuan Yin, and she looks exactly as she does on a statue. Her skin is bluish green. And I went, oh, instantly knew, intergalactic princess. Interesting. And then she looks at me with these half open Buddha eyes. Doesn't say anything, just very telepathic conversation. And all she does is she bows just that much. That's it. Just that movement, just boom. And as she does, every cell of my body explodes into the most outrageous love I can even describe. And it was such a realization of the immensity of power all of us have that we are slowly but surely remembering and reclaiming as we go through our evolution in time, because time lets us evolve. What we think real time is actually slow motion compared to quantum reality. And we're going through our evolution nearly at a snail's pace, as if the flower wants to savor the blossoming of every petal, while the ego inside the flower is trying to experience this at record speed. And that's part of the play of really remembering who we are as spiritual royalty and the expansions and activations we go through with our guides. And for me, it's through Melchizedek, what's called the Order of Melchizedek, which I think is the collective you're speaking of, is what I transmit and embody and what guides me. And Melchizedek is very stoic. It's like a column of light. It's very quiet, but it's immensely powerful. And the whole focus of the Melchizedek vibration is all about embodiment. And it's not about what we do, but from the place it comes from, right? So every day, it's not a matter of what we do or don't do, but from what depth of alignment, from what depth of love, and from what depth of gentleness and compassion do we allow words and actions to emanate from? And so all of my work is to help people step into that embodiment.
Now, a lot of what you're teaching, and you may notice, especially as a spiritual teacher on the forefront of our spiritual evolution,
Yes.
it feels like we're going through a discernible spiritual change on the planet, and your teachings are important. We go back 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Right now, in this moment, there is a discernible change happening in the light, in the heart, in our understanding of love.
Yes.
And that's why we have people like you coming forward. That's, because we're being brought up through to that other level through your awareness. And I wanted to know from your experience what your perception of these changes on the planet are.
Yes.
How would you define it?
It's a very interesting question. I love that. And thank you for asking that. It's a brilliant opportunity to talk about a really incredible shift, but we can put it very simply. That in the old paradigm, up till, let's go back 20 years ago or whatever, in the very early days of, self-help or whatever, love was framed as a choice. Choose love, not fear, which in current days, I would say, love the one who's afraid. And what happens is, as we evolve, as we go through these activations and expansions, what happens, and this is what intimidates the ego, because the ego derives a false level of power of thinking that its free will gives it the power to control things. And what intimidates the ego is that the more you evolve in consciousness, the more you elevate in frequency, the less love becomes a choice. And what that means is you enter into dimensional spaces where there is no other choice but love. Now, love can be fierce, love can be direct, love can be soft. The love of a mother holding a newborn is equal to a mother yanking her child out of oncoming traffic. So love can be many things. But I think part of the predicament that we're facing in this transition, or at least one of the clarifications that I think is important to make, is that people are perceiving their evolution and the pressure they put on themselves by how often they are able to choose love. So it becomes a performance of accomplishment. Instead, we look at, can I look at and unravel all the barriers to the love that I am, and know that where I'm headed is not choosing love, even though when we choose love, that's an incredible moment, but that I'm entering into a new paradigm of reality where love is simply reality. And when there's no other choice but love, we then enter into this new horizon where the infinite ways in which love can move through all of us allows us to be heart-centered, but not emotional doormats, and certainly not going toe-to-toe with the programming patterns and unprocessed pain of other people. And I think what causes people to get triggered and to go up and down, back and forth in their journey, and to get, swung back and forth through the waves of polarity, is that we think love is a choice. Love becomes the only choice there is. And how deep do we have to dive into ourselves? How much of our defenses need to be unraveled and loved and nurtured in order for love to be a reality, not a choice the ego tries to choose or judge itself as a performance. Love becomes the only thing there is. So responding in a state of complete alignment from the outside looking in may look rather impressive to a lot of people. And they think, wow, how did you make that choice? The truth is, I didn't. I don't make choices. Choices make me. I am the space in which choices move through. And what moves through me is mercy, compassion, patience, and love. So there's a difference between trying to create a loving ego, trying to make your ego more patient and compassionate, versus just being the love, patience, and compassion of the universe made manifest into form as we appear.
Amazing. So we often find ourselves in this growing, evolving environment,
Yes.
in situations where it appears on the outside that
Yes.
we are the only real agent of love, even though we know that all around us is love and the people we're interacting with
Right.
are love. But we find ourselves that if the love is not expressed
Right.
through me, then it's not going to be expressed. So it's
Right.
almost like I'm being thrown into environments
Right.
where I am the agent of love in this moment, and
Mhm.
and I have a role to express that love. And so
Right.
for some, it feels like, why am I here in this moment? What am I doing? I find it a very, very powerful question. I'm the agent of love right now. So how can I express this love? Do you have similar experiences? Does that resonate with you?
I used to have experiences like that, and I totally resonate with what you're saying. I used to have moments where I would be, the loving being, and would equally find resentment or confusion when other people weren't meeting me in love. And then it's easy to confuse that, like, what about me is lacking that I'm not attracting? And we go through all these superstitious potholes. And the truth is that part of what the universe is refining in all of us is learning how to do two things. One, love is our being, not limited to a doing. So we have to kind of get out of the habit of, like, I'm going to love to make my feelings different, to make people different, right? We have to get out of this subtle, socially acceptable manipulation of, like, I'm going to love as a way of trying to create a more preferable experience. And instead, love is simply the space in which moments happen. And what happens is we start to see that people may not be aware of love. They may not be expressing love. But what we're refining in all of us is the ability to love without agenda, to love without expectation of reciprocity, to be able to know that when we start to reach the optimal consistency of true unconditional love, the love we offer is a one-sided transaction, and it fulfills us and brings us to a state of completion before the energy reaches another person. And we start to realize that other people are simply reflecting to us, are treating us, are showing us their relationship with their own divinity. And that the way people treat us has actually nothing to do with us, but they are in our lives to help purify our love, to make it a one-sided transaction. When people hear me say that, they go, that means I'm going to live loving people and never getting it back, and that sucks. But that's not really what happens. Once we complete this initiation, we go from being the people who feel like the only agents of love to being people who are being trained to love and not look for feedback as a way of managing their ego's identity. And it's a very deep initiation. And it's one where what carries us through this initiation is asking ourselves, how much love can I give myself so to not expect or rely on other people to provide it to me? And that's when we become trauma informed. That's when we see through the eyes of compassion, and we see that other people are only treating us to the depth and degree to what truth they've met in themselves. And again, it's part of an initiation to be love, not someone who's trying to use love to improve or make things different. It's very deep.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the key elements
Mhm.
of understanding this loving process is
Yes.
forgiveness of self and others.
Yes.
How have you been guided through Melchizedek and your own experiences
Mhm.
in offering this lesson of forgiveness?
I have, in my new book, All for Love, I have a whole chapter on forgiveness. And what's interesting is every time I teach a concept, I like to teach it from different dimensional standpoints and platitudes. So I always like to teach things differently because in every dimension, every concept is different, right? There's an awakening in every dimension, and it's always different, which is why when people talk about awakening, from my perspective, I'm like, okay, well, from what dimension? Because it changes as you move up the ladder. We talk about forgiveness. The most recent download of forgiveness I've received is one of my favorites.
Mhm.
And forgiveness is when we separate the essence of someone's soul from the patterning, conditioning, and unprocessed pain of their ego. And what forgiveness actually is the ability to say, I offer you forgiveness as a reminder that it's your unhealed pain that played the role of whatever pain I have endured. And even though I was caused pain, I may require boundaries and I may not feel safe to let this person into my life. I can separate the fact that it's their unhealed pain that caused this damage. And yet my forgiveness is praying for the light of their soul to move further into their body so they can be freed of their inner torment and no one else has to be harmed in their presence. It's very common when we are identifying with our pain to think that I need someone who has hurt me to make things right. It gets us into it's a very interesting, subtle defense mechanism of righteous entitlement. And of course, all the pain we've gone through is to be embraced with compassion and love because no one deserves to be harmed. But it's through the act of merciful forgiveness that we say, if no one deserves to be harmed, what role am I playing in the act of forgiveness to help transform the lives of those who have been harmed, who then played the roles in harming me? And can I help break the cycle by saying, I respond to your ego and unhealed pain, but I acknowledge the brightness of your soul. And I pray for that soul to move further into your body to free you and to allow no one else to be harmed in your presence. And I remember in the very beginning, I was being taught this many years ago. There was a practice my guides gave me, and they said, go through every person that has ever hurt you and pray that all of their dreams are granted right now, even before your own. And I sat there and I went, what? And I sat with that and I went, because it opened something up inside of me. And I realized that the definition of unhealed pain are the grudges we hold against those that are too hurt to come from a place of conscious awareness. And by me praying for every person that has ever harmed me or that has ever harmed another human being, be reunited with the light of their soul And please even grant that wish before you bring my dreams into reality. Something incredibly selfless woke up inside of me, and it led to me dedicating my entire life to healing the wounds of those that have been hurt, victims as well as predators, to break the cycle of suffering on this planet, to really bring more of the ascension into our physical reality. And when you start to kind of glimpse that kind of mercy, love, and kindness, it changes the molecules of your being. It literally makes who you were no longer in existence and simply makes you a space that says those that hurt others are crying out for the love and reconnection to spirit. And it's my forgiveness that can grant that wish for their spirit. And when I do that, I'm being the universe in action, not a person trying to find my place in a universe.
Wow. So one of the things that you teach is about truth, about honesty and truth, especially in very interpersonal interactions. And I find what you teach, powerful. Talk to me about how I can express my truth. And sometimes we don't express our truth, thinking that we're being loving in our untruth, if that makes sense. So
it does. I love that question. I think that it might sound radical, especially in today's social media driven society. We think truth is an opinion or a viewpoint. Like, I have the right to my truth. But let's think of the truth like an acronym. TRUTH. To rely upon the highest or to rely upon the holiest. So what speaking your truth is when in any given moment you are asking your higher self, what is the choice that my higher self would make? What are the words my higher self wishes to say? Because truth is not a viewpoint, an opinion. Truth is to rely upon the holiest in navigating your journey by embracing choices of your highest ethical value. And at a certain point, that becomes more exciting than engaging in conflict, having the final say, or thinking that a world of diverse viewpoints has to find common ground. Because the word truth means that which is. The sentence that which is pointing to that which does not change. Opinions change, viewpoints change, perspectives change. So all of those things are expressions of truth, but we don't find the truth in any of those singular options. The truth is the unchanging, highest and holiest source within us. And when we are relying only upon the highest, only upon the holiest, only relying on love to determine what we say and what we choose, that's when we become transformers of reality instead of victims of circumstance. And it's a radical shift to rely upon the holiest truth.
Wow. Dropping bombs all day long. Amazing, Matt. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
How do you see, as you talk about dimensions and evolution and ascension, how do you see what the next level of teaching is from where we're at now in this sort of illusion to the next one? Have you had glimpses of it? How do you see it?
What I find to be the next level of human evolution, where we're going, and we in our reality we call it awakening, but awakening is actually the integration phase of our healing journey, right? There's dark night of the soul, there's the final battle, there's all these really popular milestones of awakening, self-realization, all these different things. But the question isn't how many teachings have I absorbed or how long do I meditate? The question is, how much of my wisdom have I integrated into the cells of my being? And so what I believe the next step is going to be are not beings trying to grandstand and pretend that they don't have egos, or to feel like when someone says they're in their ego, like it's an insult. All spiritual masters have egos. But spiritual masters have completely integrated egos, because without an ego, it'd be snowing and you'd walk outside naked and you'd feel nothing. So this no ego thing is really a teaching that was meant to say no attachment or identification with your ego, because it's integrated, meaning there's no separation between you, source, and self, which we could call that the Holy Trinity. And when you are the sun, you don't feel your own warmth, which a lot of people experience as emptiness, but you witness your warmth by how it warms others around you. And so really, I think the next stage of human evolution is the acceptance of the human ego, the acceptance of the role it plays in our transmutation and awakening and healing journey, and the process through which we realize I will awaken in consciousness the more I allow my healing journey and my ego to be integrated versus abandoned. And so this time in history that we're seeing, which for a lot of people can seem like the end of the world, I'm calling the end of denial.
Amazing. So one of the lessons I've had with love is there's sort of a dynamic, not necessarily duality, between love and wisdom.
Right.
And when you start to evolve spiritually, you have to learn to balance love and wisdom.
Mhm.
There seems to be this dynamic that keeps on going. Help me to understand how I can balance love and wisdom, if that makes sense.
No, it's a great question. And I think that one of the things we're waking up out of is the distance between love and wisdom, that when wisdom is being embodied, it always expresses itself through love. And what we're finding in our current day and age, we could see it very much on social media, is that sometimes people want to lead with the wisdom instead of the love. Now as an example, when I'm on stage speaking to many, many people, when I'm serving people, and I'm answering questions, I'm doing all my healing work, that's when I'm being an instrument of loving wisdom. When I am in my personal life, unless someone asks me a direct question, I am the embodiment of wisdom, not necessarily the spokesperson of wisdom. And what that means is that I can be with a person, I can give them support and companionship, I can hold space for their experience, as I wrote about in my brand new book. And I can give them such a depth of companionship and connection that their circumstances begin to heal without anyone to correct or to debate with. And so I think what happens is that the ego tends to co-opt wisdom as a false level of superiority. And when love and wisdom are reunited, wisdom is what we embody without always having to speak morsels of knowledge. Because oftentimes as empaths, we are so uncomfortable with how it feels to be around someone. Part of us wants us to help them because we compassionately want them to feel better, but also we want them to feel better so we can actually improve our experiences of them. And so that becomes our journey of surrender that says, how can I support, validate, value, and embrace this person exactly where they're at without trying to change them? Because if we start asserting ourselves by saying, here's what I would do if I were you, or, oh, you should know this quote, in order for someone's ego to say that you're right, they subconsciously have to feel wrong by comparison. So we're trying to help people, and people walk away not just suffering, but wrong. And what I want someone to do is to have a realization that they come up with themselves so they can truly own it. They won't own it if Matt Kahn blabs it at them, but if I can help them realize it on their own, then it's their realization. So of course, when I'm working with people, like I'm on this program, free reign, we're doing our thing. But in my personal life, I can literally be with someone in a state of suffering, and I can help transform their circumstances without having to give a reframe, a correction, but just pure loving support. And it's in those moments where we're not dividing wisdom from love. We're not leading with wisdom to get to love. We're allowing love to be the embodiment of wisdom that doesn't need to be spoken in order to be transmitted.
Amazingly well said.
Thank you.
I'm almost speechless as to the next question, because that was the answer I was looking for. I would love to, a lot of times I am trying to help people out,
Yes.
and we stop at survival mode. So many people I talk to, I can't, for them to explore the lessons of love and wisdom, to
Mhm.
move and ascend, they have to move on just basic survival mode,
That's
paying
right.
for their next meal. And so how can I help people to move beyond that survival mode, and gain some level of prosperity to where they are free to explore these other lessons? Does that make sense?
Great
Yeah.
question. The first step is we cannot be attached to when, why, or how they shift and how that occurs.
Mhm.
For example, I can recall times where I'm walking down the street and I see someone who's living on the street,
Right.
and our eyes catch each other. And I remember talking to a man living on the street, and I walked up to him and I said, "Hello, sir. How's your day?" And he's looked at me because our eyes caught. So I thought, oh, I guess we're supposed to talk. And he goes, I could really use $1. And so I said, well, let's play a game. Let me open up my wallet and see what's there. And I pulled out a $20 bill and I said, look, you won. Here you go. Just here you go. Would that suffice? And he almost couldn't take it. And I said, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your day. And I said, what's your name? And he told me his name, and he told me a story and how he was a high functioning professional whose life spiraled out of control and he found himself somehow on the street. And I said, well, may this moment together and the money I'm giving you be a sneak preview of the abundance coming into your life to turn things around. And I'm just the messenger. And he burst into tears and we hugged. And the most powerful part of that story, of course, it's wonderful to give someone $20 to make sure they can have some meals or whatever they do with it. Who am I to tell people what to do with the generosity they request? But what was amazing is he said to me, no one has talked to me this way since I've been on the street. And I said, I am here to honor your divinity. And it is that divinity that is guiding you through and beyond this. And let that be known. And I walked away and I realized it's the way we talk to people. It's the way we treat people that literally is the transformer, not trying to turn their insufferable doing into a better form of doing. It's about how we treat them and the behavior we model for them that they will turn around and pass along to another. That's how unity is being awakened.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So a lot of times, I'll have an amazing conversation with you and read an amazing spiritual book and have powerful meditative experience. Then I'll turn on the TV and I will, get caught up in politics or something terrible or wars happening in the world. And I get just blown askew from it.
Yes.
And I am continually trying to figure out ways to learn how to react to it, to see the world, because I know the wisdom of, I know what I'm supposed to do. I know I'm supposed to hold it in love, but still, it seems like the environment around me continually, I see things out in the world that I don't feel I have control over. Help me to interact in this world of seeming chaos, beyond my own individual experience. How when I see, terrible things happen on the news, how can I play a role in this spiritually? Because I feel there as an empath. I feel their pain. When somebody's getting beaten on TV, I'm getting beaten. So how do I deal with this?
Here's one of the mantras I was given by the universe that I use all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see things, first of all, what we're seeing in present moment reality is something that by the time we see it, it's already come and gone from a quantum perspective. We are seeing how things are becoming what they already are, but we're living it out as if it's happening in real time, which is the dream of life. What I say in response to anything I see is thank you for reminding me what my light is transforming. And sometimes we're seeing negativity, battle with negativity, We're seeing domination overpower the innocent. We're seeing a lot of incredibly unfortunate and devastating things. And there is never a moment in my life where I don't feel the devastation. But when I feel devastation, the devastation is telling me that my light is transmuting devastation out of the planet. And what I'm seeing that seems to cause devastation is just a play of what my energy field is transforming. And so on a daily basis, I'll go on to CNN, for example, and I look at the top stories. And whatever the top stories that usually have some degree of uncertainty, fear, or atrocity, I am literally saying, thank you for showing me what my light is transforming. I'm not looking for it to transform in that moment because I live as a timeless being, and trying to obligate things to shift at a specific time is what locks us into the battle of conflict and duality. So with no attachment to time, I am simply, as an instrument of peace and consciousness, putting into the quantum field the command, thank you for showing me what my light is transforming. It's strengthening my field. It's transmuting what I'm seeing. And I start to see in real time that although we're seeing a world embroiled in conflict, and we're starting to see the very patterning and infrastructure that has kept pain hiding and being used against each other as human beings, when we say, thank you for reminding me what my light is transforming, you start to see from an alchemical point of view how everything is in a transmutation process. Knowing that the darkest life gets is opening up a greater reservoir of brighter light to shine, kind of like after 9/11, as horrific as that was. For 2 days, we had a world stunned in a state of awe and peace. And so the more we participate as healers, we say, thank you for reminding me what my light is transforming, not as a Pollyanna positive thinking way of coping with the uncertainties of life, but to step forward and say, I will allow my light to be a part of the solution, instead of by default allowing my ego to perpetuate problems. Thank you for reminding me what my light is transforming. If you try that, and for anyone watching this, try it for a day in response to anything that disturbs you. Thank you for showing me what my light is transforming, and watch what happens. It's astounding.
Well, I just want to tell you, Matt, thank you for reminding me what my light is transforming. Thank you.
By the way, that was so perfectly placed, and it's such an honor. I was like, wow, that was really good. Amazing. Thank you.
Feels like that we've known each other before. I don't know. It feels like I've had this interaction before, but something special about it. So I'm left speechless, which is very unusual for me. So thank you for the impact. Everybody needs to check out a class that Matt is offering called Heal to Completion. They can find that at mattkahn, KAHN.org.
Yes, sir.
And go on Amazon. I'm going to put links in the description for Matt's amazing books. And I'm going to go run out and reread these because you've touched my heart. And you hear that all the time. It's a cliche, especially when spiritual people talk, but I mean it. You know, I'm continually blown away how the universe inspires me by the people that I meet, and you're one of those that has inspired me, and I didn't think I could be inspired like that. So thank you. It's really special and amazing. How can I only have a couple minutes. I just how give me an idea how I'd like to know about your ritual when you start your day. Give me a little bit of idea. How do I start my day in love?
What I say is I always set an intention, and I say, dear beloved universe, thank you for working through me to bring more love to the world and to bring the most loving possibilities my way for the greater good of all now, or something of that nature. But what I do is I set an intention that thanks the universe for working through me and allowing what moves through me to be the very doer while I rest in a state of being. So on the outside looking in, it looks like I'm making choices and doing things, but it's kind of flowing through me. And I think that a lot of times we wake up in the morning and we think, okay, today's going to be the day I get my shit together. And today's going to be the day I finally do the things I accept and all these things. Instead, we say, thank you, beloved universe, for working through me, accepting on my behalf, forgiving on my behalf, loving on my behalf, and allowing everyone around me to be blessed, healed, and transformed for the greater good of humanity, and may it begin with me. And we say a prayer that allows it to be what works through us instead of be done by us. And we shift from feeling depleted, overwhelmed, and exhausted to being enlightened, aligned, and inspired.
I would really love to use some of the amazing affirmations and intentions that you've provided in one of my meditations in the future. If I could have permission to do that, I would be truly honored to do that.
I'd be honored if you did that as well.
Thank you so much. So everybody check out the links in the description. The one, the only Matt Kahn. I sure hope I get a chance to talk to you again in the future.
You will. Let's do it.
And let's, we'll have a little better circumstances next time. So thank you so much. And welcome, Matt, to the Reality Revolution.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
We return you now to your local announcement.